"Get out! I'm the HOA president and this is my property now." She screamed this at me, in my own ranch office. Then she actually called 911, claiming I was trespassing. When cops arrived, she told them she had authority over all properties within 100 meters. But while she was ranting about her jurisdiction over this office, she had absolutely no idea what else I owned. The truth would destroy everything she thought she knew. I'll mend your city if you've dealt with insane HOAs, because this woman was about to learn a very expensive lesson. So there I was, Marcus Thompson, 35 years old, owner of a small agricultural consulting company, sitting in my ranch office on what should have been a normal Tuesday morning. I was in the middle of an important video conference with a client from Texas about their cattle breeding program. Behind me on the wall hung photos of the quarter horses I'd trained over the years, and through my window you could see my entire property stretching out, a detail that would become very important later. The morning sun was casting golden light across the paddocks when suddenly the peaceful atmosphere was shattered by the wailing of police sirens. Not just one patrol car passing by, but multiple sirens getting louder and louder, until the flashing red and blue lights were reflecting off my office windows like some kind of nightmare disco ball. My client on the screen, Mr. Johnson from Dallas, looked concerned as the noise grew deafening. "Marcus, what's going on over there? You getting arrested or something?" he asked, half joking but clearly worried about our meeting. "I honestly have no idea what's happening, Mr. Johnson. Give me just a minute to check this out," I replied, trying to maintain my professional composure while my mind raced with possibilities. Had there been an accident? A fire at a neighboring property? Never in my wildest dreams did I imagine what was actually happening. Through my office window I could see 2 police cruisers had pulled up right in front of my building, sirens still wailing like they'd just arrived at a major crime scene. And there, standing in the middle of my driveway, arms waving dramatically like she was conducting an orchestra of chaos, was Margaret Whitfield, or Maggie as she insisted everyone call her when she wanted to seem friendly, which wasn't often. Maggie was the newly elected HOA president of the Sunset Hills neighborhood that had been built about half a mile from my ranch. She was 65 years old, a retired elementary school principal who apparently missed bossing people around so much that she decided to make it her retirement hobby. Her gray hair was pulled up in a bun so tight it looked painful, thick glasses that magnified her eyes to owl-like proportions, and her face was flushed red with what appeared to be righteous indignation. She was wearing what I can only describe as her power suit, a black blazer with shoulder pads that belonged in the 1980s, frantically pointing at my office while shouting at the officers. "That man is trespassing on HOA property. He's illegally occupying our community ranch office. He refuses to leave even after multiple warnings. I have reason to believe he might be armed and dangerous," she screeched, her voice carrying across the distance with impressive volume. The officers approached my door and knocked, firmly but professionally. I excused myself from my client, who was now watching with undisguised curiosity through our video connection, probably getting more entertainment than he'd bargained for in a business meeting. Opening the door, I was greeted by Officer Rodriguez, a young cop who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else but here, dealing with what was clearly shaping up to be another HOA drama. "Mr. Thompson? We received a 911 call about someone illegally occupying this building and possibly being armed. Can you explain what's going on here?" His tone was professional, but tired, like someone who dealt with too many false alarms. "Officer, I'm honestly as confused as you are. This is my ranch office on my property, which I've owned since 2019. I'm in the middle of a business meeting. I'm certainly not armed, and I have no idea what Mrs. Whitfield is talking about," I replied, keeping my voice calm and reasonable. That's when Hurricane Maggie burst through the officers like a linebacker, her face now purple with rage. "Don't listen to his lies. I am the president of the Sunset Hills Homeowners Association. This entire area falls under our jurisdiction. This man is occupying community property without authorization. I demand you remove him immediately." She was practically vibrating with indignation, spittle flying as she ran. Officer Rodriguez sighed deeply and turned to her with the patience of a saint. "Ma'am, do you have any documentation proving this is HOA property? And can you explain exactly what weapon you saw?" Maggie's eyes darted around frantically. "I don't need documentation. I'm the president. I have supreme authority over all properties within 100 meters of our residential zone. And he has horses. Large, dangerous horses." I couldn't help but let out a small laugh at that, which only seemed to enrage her further. Pulling out my phone, I quickly accessed my cloud storage where I kept all my important documents, a habit that was about to pay off big time. "Officer Rodriguez, here are my property deeds, all the legal documentation proving I own this ranch, including this office. I bought the entire property from the Henderson family 5 years ago, long before the Sunset Hills development even existed." The officer examined the documents on my phone, then called dispatch to verify the property records. After a few minutes, he turned back to us with a look that said he'd had quite enough of this nonsense. Dispatch confirms this address is registered as commercial agricultural property under Marcus Thompson's name. Ma'am, this is clearly his property. There's no crime here and you cannot use 911 for civil disputes. Consider this an official warning about misusing emergency services. Maggie stood there, mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water, clearly not computing that her authority had just been completely dismissed. The small crowd that had gathered to watch the drama, several neighbors with their phones out recording upstairs during the conversation with us. Did she really call 911 over property she doesn't own? Someone whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear. I decided to drive the point home, partly for the officers, but mostly for the recording phones. Officer, would you like to see the survey map? It clearly shows my ranch boundaries and the HOA residential zone. We're completely separate properties with no overlap whatsoever. I went back inside and grabbed the large laminated map I kept for exactly these kinds of boundary discussions, spreading it on the hood of the police car for everyone to see. As you can see here, I pointed to the clearly marked boundaries, my ranch is zoned commercial agricultural, completely independent from the residential HOA zone, which is here, 50 meters away. There's absolutely no legal basis for any HOA claims on my property. Maggie's face went from purple to white and back to red in rapid succession. This isn't over, Thompson. I know the law. I've studied the law. Everything within 100 meters of a residential community falls under HOA governance. I'll prove it. I'll find a way. The officers were already heading back to their vehicles, clearly done with this circus. As Maggie was ushered away from my property, she turned back with eyes full of venom. You'll regret this, Thompson. I'll show you what real power looks like. This isn't over. I returned to my office and unmuted my video call with Mr. Johnson, who was grinning from ear to ear. Sorry about that interruption. Apparently our new HOA president is a bit enthusiastic about her perceived authority. Johnson laughed heartily. Marcus, that was better than cable TV. I've dealt with some crazy HOA folks in my time, but calling the cops on someone for owning their own property? That's a new one. We wrapped up our meeting, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this was far from over. Looking out my window at the 2,000 square meter plot of undeveloped land I owned at the edge of my property, I wondered what Maggie really wanted, because this level of crazy doesn't just come from nowhere. But here's the thing, Maggie didn't just want my ranch office. She wanted something much bigger, and when I said no to her face 3 months ago, that's when the war began. What did she want? Drop a comment if you think you know, because trust me, it's crazier than you think. Let me take you back 3 months before the 911 incident, to when this whole insane saga actually began. My ranch complex sits in that sweet spot where rural meets suburban, a place that used to be pure countryside until development crept closer. I'd bought this entire property 5 years ago from the Henderson family, an elderly couple who'd run cattle here for 40 years before deciding to retire to Florida. The total area spans about 1.5 acres, which includes my 2-story ranch office building, where I run my agricultural consulting business, a modern horse stable with 3 stalls and an automated feeding system, a climate-controlled feed storage facility, a spacious training paddock with beautiful oak fencing, and that crucial piece, a large undeveloped plot of about 2,000 square meters that I'd been saving for future expansion. When I bought the property, I made sure to purchase more than just what you could see above ground, though the full significance of that wouldn't become clear until much later in this story. The Sunset Hills residential development was built 3 years after I'd established my ranch, starting as a quiet community of about 30 homes. For the first couple of years we coexisted peacefully. They had their suburban paradise, I had my ranch, and everyone minded their own business. That golden age ended 6 months ago, when Margaret Whitfield moved into the neighborhood. She'd barely unpacked her boxes before launching herself into local politics with the enthusiasm of a missionary and the subtlety of a bulldozer. Having spent 30 years wielding absolute power as an elementary school principal, she apparently couldn't handle retirement without finding new people to boss around. She ran for HOA president on a platform of law and order for our neighborhood, with promises of zero tolerance for violations, and won by a narrow margin of 16 to 14 votes. From day one, she ruled with an iron fist, fining the Jones family for grass that exceeded 3 inches, penalizing the Smiths for putting their garbage cans out at 5:59 a.m. instead of 6, and issuing citations to the Browns for painting their garage door the wrong shade of beige. Then came that fateful Saturday morning that set everything in motion. I was in the paddock working with one of my horses when a pristine white Lexus pulled up to my gate. Out stepped Maggie, dressed like she was heading to a United Nations summit rather than a neighborly visit, followed by Carol Jenkins, the HOA secretary. Carol was 62, silver-haired, just months away from retirement after 40 years as an accountant, and she looked exhausted and worried, constantly glancing at Maggie like a mouse watching a cat. Maggie, on the other hand, radiated aggressive confidence, clutching her clipboard like a weapon and marching toward me with purpose. "Mr. Thompson," she announced without any pleasantries. I'm Margaret Whitfield, the newly elected president of the Sunset Hills HOA. I'm here with a mutually beneficial business proposition. I invited them into my office, maintaining the hospitality my grandfather had taught me by offering them Ceylon tea imported from Sri Lanka. Carol looked around appreciatively at the oak-paneled walls, the framed awards from horse training competitions, my MBA diploma displayed prominently, clearly impressed by the professional setup. Maggie, however, wrinkled her nose like she smelled manure, though my office was cleaner than most five-star hotel lobbies. "I'll get straight to the point," Maggie said, flipping open her clipboard with theatrical importance. "I want to purchase that undeveloped section of your land, the 2,000 square meter plot for our new Sunset Hills Community Center. I'm prepared to offer $50,000. Cash." I nearly choked on my expensive tea. That land, based on current market values and its prime location, was worth at least $200,000, possibly $250,000 to the right buyer. "I appreciate the offer, Mrs. Whitfield, but I'm not interested in selling. I have my own development plans for that section," I replied, politely but firmly. I watched her face transform from pale pink to deep red to an alarming purple, like an angry chameleon cycling through its color repertoire. "You should reconsider your position very carefully, Mr. Thompson. As HOA president, I have ways of making your life significantly more complicated," she said, her voice dripping with barely concealed threat. "Is that a threat, Mrs. Whitfield?" I asked, maintaining my calm demeanor. "It's friendly advice from a concerned neighbor," she replied with a smile that never reached her eyes. She stood abruptly, Carol scrambling to follow like a trained shadow. At the door, Maggie turned back, her eyes glittering with malice. "You'll regret this decision, Thompson. Mark my words." The war began the following week with the first of what would become an avalanche of official violations. The letter arrived on HOA letterhead, impressive with its formal language and utterly ridiculous in its content. "Dear neighboring ranch, the Sunset Hills HOA requires you to register as a business member and pay monthly fees of $500 for the privilege of operating within our zone of influence. Furthermore, all livestock operations must comply with the 2024 HOA guidelines for aesthetic harmony." Jake Morrison, my 25-year-old ranch hand who helped with the horses, read it and burst out laughing. "Boss, is this lady for real? The HOA wants to charge you rent for running your own ranch? What's next? A breathing tax for using their air?" But Maggie was just getting started. Over the next month, my mailbox overflowed with increasingly absurd violation notices. Week 1 brought equine vocalizations exceeding 65 decibels, fined $200, because apparently my horses were neighing too enthusiastically. Week 2 escalated to aesthetic violation, unapproved barn color, fined $300 even though the barn had been painted that exact shade of red for 20 years. Week 3 hit new heights of ridiculousness, with olfactory assault from livestock emissions exceeding acceptable parameters, fined $500, which was a fancy way of saying horses poop and it smells. Week 4 brought commercial vehicle loitering, feed truck parked over 30 minutes, fined $400, because apparently delivering horse feed was now a crime. The total fines reached into the thousands, each notice more preposterous than the last. The direct confrontation came on a Friday evening around 7 o'clock, as I was giving the horses their dinner. The sound of multiple cars pulling up made me look toward the gate where Maggie had arrived with her full war council, Carol and 2 other HOA board members I'd seen around but never met. She was dressed like she was attending the Oscars, complete with red-bottom designer heels that immediately sank into the soft ground, though she seemed beyond caring about her shoes. "Thompson, I need to speak with you immediately," she shouted across the paddock. I continued spreading the alfalfa hay, not bothering to turn around. "I can hear you fine from there. Just keep your voice down so you don't spook the horses." This seemed to enrage her further. "You need to comply with HOA regulations immediately. This isn't some backwater farm anymore. This is a civilized community." "You're right about one thing," I said calmly, finally turning to face her. "This isn't a backwater farm. It's a commercial agricultural operation that predates your HOA by 3 years. It's not in a residential zone, and it's certainly not under your jurisdiction." Carol spoke up timidly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Mrs. Whitfield, perhaps we should review the actual boundaries?" "Silence!" Maggie roared with such force that Carol jumped, my horses snorted nervously, and even the 2 board members took a step back. "I know the law. I've researched the law. Everything within 100 meters of residential property falls under HOA governance. This is established precedent." I decided to handle this with facts rather than emotions. Leading the group into my office, I pulled out the massive survey map from my fireproof filing cabinet, spreading it across my conference table under the bright lights. "Please, look at this official county survey map. The red line shows my ranch boundaries, zoned commercial agricultural. The blue line shows Sunset Hills, zoned residential. The distance between them is 50 meters of public land. There's no overlap, no gray area, no room for interpretation. Maggie stared at the map, her face flushing even deeper. I don't care about your maps. I'll find a way. I'll show you what real power looks like. Before storming out, she paused at the window, overlooking my undeveloped land, her eyes gleaming with naked greed. All of this should belong to the community. To me. That night, after Maggie and her entourage left, I made a decision that would prove crucial. I called Jake over. Jake, I want you to install a complete security camera system tomorrow. Full coverage, 16 high-definition cameras with night vision, motion detection, battery backup, the works. Jake looked at me with concern. You think she's gonna do something crazy, boss? I don't think, Jake. I know, I replied, gazing out at the undeveloped plot of land where I often stood to watch sunsets and plan for the future. And I have a feeling she's going to do something incredibly stupid involving that piece of land. That night, my security cameras caught something that made my blood run cold. Maggie wasn't alone. And what they did to my ranch? Have you ever seen someone fake an injury for insurance fraud? Comment yes if you know where this is going. Because what happened next got me sued for assault I never committed. The fog was thick as pea soup at 6 o'clock that morning, a week after the confrontation at the horse paddock. I was startled by a gentle knock at my office door. So soft I almost missed it. Checking my newly installed security camera feed, I saw Carol Jenkins standing outside, but not in her usual HOA attire. She wore an old coat and looked like she had been crying all night, her eyes red and puffy, shoulders hunched with the weight of what she was about to do. Marcus, I need to talk to you urgently. Maggie just did something terrible. I cannot stay silent anymore, she said the moment I opened the door, her voice shaking with emotion. I invited her in and made strong Colombian coffee, the kind that could wake the dead and give courage to the living. She sat down, hands trembling so badly around the coffee mug that I worried she might drop it. Last night, Maggie called an emergency meeting at 10 p.m. She said it was urgent HOA business that could not wait. But Marcus, only 3 people showed up, her, me, and Harold Peterson. Our bylaws clearly state we need a quorum of 7 board members for any official decisions. She did not care. Carol pulled out her smartphone with shaking hands. I am retiring next month after 40 years as an accountant. I have never done anything dishonest in my entire career. But Maggie, my daughter, is a lawyer in Dallas. She told me that if I ever witnessed illegal activity, I needed to collect evidence. So I recorded the meeting. She showed me a document she had kept, and my hands actually shook with anger as I read what Maggie had tried to push through in her sham meeting. The resolution was beyond insane, reading like something from a dictator's playbook. Emergency Resolution 2024-15. The Thompson Ranch must construct a 4-meter concrete wall around the entire property within 7 days. All livestock activities are banned after 6 p.m. Outstanding violation fines of $8,000 are due immediately. The HOA demands full access rights to inspect for violations at any time without notice. Non-compliance will result in fines of $1,500 per day and immediate legal action. Signed by Margaret Whitfield, President, Carol Jenkins, Harold Peterson, Janet Miller, Robert Kim, and Sandra Davis. I looked up at Carol, frowning at the signatures. But Carol, there are enough signatures here for a quorum. How is this illegal? Carol's face went pale as she explained the depth of Maggie's deception. Janet, Robert, and Sandra were not even there. They were never called, never notified. Maggie forced me to forge their signatures. She had sample signatures from their membership applications and made me copy them. My mind reeled at the audacity, but Carol was not done. Marcus, I need you to hear this recording. You need to understand what kind of person we are dealing with. She played the audio file, the quality crystal clear thanks to modern smartphone technology. Maggie's voice filled my office, dripping with venom and entitlement. I do not care if we have enough people. Thompson refused my generous offer. Now he pays the price. Harold's nervous voice interjected. But Maggie, this is not legal. We cannot just... Legal? I am the law in this HOA. Carol, write in the minutes that all 7 members were present. The recording continued with Carol's barely audible whisper. But Mrs. Whitfield, I cannot. Do you want to lose your job? Remember, I know about your credit card debt. It would be such a shame if everyone in the neighborhood found out the HOA secretary is drowning in debt. Now write what I tell you. There was a long pause, then Carol's defeated whisper. I will write it. Maggie's triumphant voice continued. Good girl. Now forge the signatures of the absent members. I have their signature samples from the membership forms. Make it look authentic. The recording ended and we sat in heavy silence. Carol looked at me with tears in her eyes. I am not proud of what I did, Marcus, but I was scared. She knows things about everyone, uses them like weapons. The very next morning at 5 a.m., Jake called me in a panic. Boss, Emergency! The whole ranch! You need to get here right now! When I arrived, the sight that greeted me was like something from a horror movie. Giant red violation notices were plastered everywhere. On the ranch gate, along the fencing, on the barn walls, even on my truck. They looked like crime scene tape, but worse, declaring my property as some kind of violator's paradise. Jake was fuming as he showed me his phone. They came at 4 in the morning. I saw it all on the cameras. 5 people led by Maggie. They took pictures and, boss, you need to see what they posted online. The Sunset Hills HOA page was flooded with photos of my ranch, each with inflammatory captions. Violator Thompson refuses to comply. This dangerous ranch threatens our community's safety and property values. Action will be taken to protect our family. But the worst was yet to come. That afternoon, while reviewing security footage from the past few days, I discovered something that made my blood boil. The timestamp read 2 a.m., 3 nights earlier. The infrared cameras had captured everything in stunning clarity. Maggie and 2 men in black hoodies had snuck onto my property through the back fence. They made their way to the area in front of the horse barn, where Maggie looked around carefully to ensure no one was watching. Then, in what would have been comical if it were not so malicious, she carefully lowered herself to the damp ground. For the next 15 minutes, she put on an Oscar-worthy performance, writhing and moaning in fake agony. Ow, my back! This unsafe ranch! No proper lighting! I am injured! The 2 men took photos from multiple angles, Maggie clutching her back, her face contorted in fake pain. One shot even showed her throwing dirt on herself to look more authentic. Then, at 2:31 a.m., Maggie stood up normally, brushed off the dirt, and actually high-fived her accomplices. They laughed laughing, completely unaware that every second had been captured in high definition. Jake watched the video with his mouth hanging open. Boss, she is setting you up for a fake injury lawsuit? Worse than that, Jake, I replied grimly. She is building a case to either force me to sell the land or face a massive lawsuit that could bankrupt me. This is a coordinated attack. Without hesitation, I called Robert Smith, a 35-year-old lawyer from Dallas who specialized in property law and HOA disputes. After reviewing the video evidence and Carl's recording, he was almost speechless. Marcus, this goes so far beyond normal HOA overreach. This is criminal, fraud, harassment, trespassing, conspiracy, forgery. We are not just going to defend against this, we are going to destroy them in court. That afternoon, exactly as Robert Smith predicted, Maggie escalated to a level of insanity I could not have imagined. At 4:30 p.m., while I was in another client meeting, those familiar sirens wailed again. Maggie had called 911 for the second time, but this call was even more outrageous than the first. Emergency, I was injured at the dangerous Thompson Ranch 3 days ago. The owner refuses to let me onto the property to gather evidence. He is destroying proof of my injuries. I am afraid he is armed and dangerous. Please send backup immediately. This time when the police arrived, I was ready with everything. Videos, recordings, documents. The war was about to reach its climax and Maggie had no idea what was coming for her. Carol just texted me, I cannot take it anymore. I am going to testify everything. I have all the original documents, even something about the land you do not know. But the real bombshell? I had not told anyone about what I actually owned, not even my lawyer. Type what if you are ready for the biggest plot twist in HOA history. 2 weeks after that second 911 call, the preliminary hearing arrived, like D-Day at the county courthouse. The courtroom was packed to capacity. Apparently, HOA drama drew crowds better than reality TV shows. Maggie entered wearing a severe black suit that aged her 10 years, all traces of her usual arrogance replaced by barely concealed panic. Her eyes shot daggers at Carol, who sat beside me with a briefcase full of damning evidence. I sat with Robert Smith, calm and prepared for war. While behind us in the public gallery, Frank Davies and Dorothy Miller joined dozens of Sunset Hills residents who had come to witness the showdown. The whispers and murmurs created a constant buzz of anticipation that filled the room. Judge Williams, a no-nonsense woman in her mid-50s with a reputation for seeing through bull, entered the courtroom. Everyone rose respectfully. Be seated, she commanded with authority. We are here for the preliminary hearing in the matter of Thompson versus Whitfield and the Sunset Hills HOA. Counsel, you may begin. Robert Smith stood up like a gladiator entering the arena, radiating confidence. Your Honor, we would like to begin by establishing a clear pattern of harassment. The defendant has called 911 twice with false accusations against my client. May I play the recordings for the court? The first call echoed through the courtroom speakers, Maggie's shrill voice filling the space. There is a trespasser occupying the HOA ranch office. He is refusing to leave. He might be armed. Snickers rippled through the gallery before Judge Williams restored order with her gavel. The second call was even more dramatic, with Maggie's voice rising to near hysteria. I was injured. Thompson destroyed evidence. He is dangerous. Send a SWAT team if necessary. Someone in the gallery could not contain themselves, muttering loudly enough for all to hear. A SWAT team for a horse ranch. Is she insane? Judge Williams banged her gavel, but I caught the ghost of a smile on her face. Robert continued smoothly. Now, Your Honor, I would like to present video evidence from my client's security system, recorded on the night of the 15th. The large courtroom monitor flickered to life, displaying crystal clear high-definition footage with night vision, so sharp you could count the buttons on Maggie's coat. The courtroom watched in stunned silence as Maggie checked carefully for cameras, not knowing about the hidden one. They watched her lower herself gingerly to the ground like a bad stunt double. They heard her theatrical moans while absolutely no one was around. The silence in the courtroom was deafening when the video ended. Judge Williams leaned forward, her eyebrows nearly reaching her hairline. Ms. Whitfield, would you care to explain this behavior? Maggie shot to her feet, her face flushed crimson. That is not what it looks like. I really did slip and fall. That video has been edited, deep-faked, AI generated. Judge Williams's voice was dry as desert sand. In 4K resolution with timestamp authentication from a security system? I think not. Sit down, Miss Whitfield. Carol's testimony came next, and for the first time in 6 months, she showed no fear. Taking the witness stand, she placed her hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth. Her voice was clear and strong as she began. I am Carol Jenkins, and until recently I was the secretary of the Sunset Hills HOA. I am here to testify about what I witnessed and what I was forced to do. Robert guided her through the testimony expertly. Mrs. Jenkins, please tell the court about the meeting on the night of the 14th. Carol took a deep breath before continuing. Maggie called an emergency meeting at 10 p.m. Only 3 of 7 board members attended. This did not meet our quorum requirement. Despite this, Maggie forced me to falsify the meeting minutes and forge the signatures of the 4 absent board members. She produced the original documents from her briefcase. Here are the actual minutes with the forged signatures. Any handwriting expert can verify they are all written by the same person, me, under duress. The audio recording played next, each word another nail in Maggie's coffin. But Carol was not finished. There is more, Your Honor. Over the past 6 months, the HOA has recorded $10,000 in administrative costs. However, the actual receipts I filed only account for $2,000. The remaining $8,000 were transferred to personal accounts belonging to Maggie Whitfield. Then came the moment everyone had been waiting for. Robert Smith stood up, savoring the anticipation. Your Honor, now we would like to clarify the fundamental issue at the heart of this case. Miss Whitfield claims authority over my client's ranch, but the truth is far different. I stood up, carrying a leather portfolio containing documents that would change everything. Your Honor, when I purchased my ranch in 2019, I did not just buy the buildings and paddocks you can see today. I purchased the entire parcel from the Henderson family, all 1.5 acres of it, including the 2,000 square meter strip of land that the Sunset Hills HOA has been claiming as abandoned public property. The same land where Miss Whitfield announced plans to build a community center. The same land for which she has been collecting donations from residents. The courtroom exploded. Maggie shot up like she had been electrocuted. No, that is impossible. That is our land. Robert calmly presented the deed and title documents to the judge. Your Honor, these legal documents from the county recorder clearly show that Mr. Thompson has owned this entire parcel, including the disputed area, since 2019. The gallery erupted in chaos. Dorothy Miller called out, Maggie told us that was going to be HOA property. Frank Davies added, she collected donations. I gave $500. Judge Williams studied the documents carefully. These documents are absolutely clear and legally binding. Mr. Thompson owns the entire parcel. I looked directly at Maggie and delivered my prepared line. Your Honor, I do not just own the ranch office. I own the land she has been standing on every time she trespassed. I own the land she promised to HOA members. She has been selling dreams about property that was never hers. Judge Williams delivered her preliminary ruling with authority. Based on the evidence presented, Ms. Whitfield has clearly engaged in harassment, misuse of emergency services, and fraud. Mr. Thompson's property rights are absolute. Ms. Whitfield, you are ordered to stay 500 feet away from Thompson Ranch. Full trial in 2 weeks. She paused dramatically. The district attorney's office will review this evidence for potential criminal charges including fraud and embezzlement. The gavel came down with finality, sealing Maggie's fate. She sat there, white as a sheet, finally understanding that her reign of terror was over. But she had one more desperate move to make. The judge's next words changed everything. The district attorney's office will review evidence for criminal charges including fraud and embezzlement. Maggie had just made her final, fatal mistake. And this time, it was not just about money or property. What do you think she did? Wrong answers only in the comments, because the truth is darker than fiction. The emergency HOA meeting convened that very evening at 6 p.m. in the Sunset Hills Community Center, and the atmosphere was electric with barely contained rage. Frank Davies wasted no time taking charge of the situation, standing at the podium with righteous anger. The room was packed with 80 residents, nearly the entire HOA membership, all buzzing with indignation after witnessing the courtroom revelation. "Friends and neighbors," Frank began, his voice carrying the weight of betrayal, "today we witnessed shocking truths about the person we elected to lead our community. Margaret Whitfield lied about property rights, forged official documents, stole from our funds, and staged a fake injury to sue our neighbor. She has disgraced this office and betrayed every single one of us." The room erupted in angry shouts and calls for immediate action. "I make a motion to immediately remove Margaret Whitfield from the position of HOA president," Frank declared above the noise. "Seconded," came the chorus of at least 20 voices in unison. Dorothy Miller stood up, her elderly frame shaking with indignation. "I donated $500 for that community center on land that Marcus Thompson actually owns. I want my money back immediately. How many others gave money for this phantom project?" Hands shot up around the room as residents realized the scope of Maggie's deception. Just then, the meeting room doors burst open with dramatic force. Maggie stormed in looking like she had been through a hurricane, mascara streaking down her face in black rivers, her usually perfect hair now resembling a bird's nest. The smell of alcohol preceded her. "You traitors, every last one of you. I am your president, your democratically elected president." Frank remained calm but firm in his response. "We're Maggie, past tense. We are voting you out right now." Even Harold Peterson, who had been part of Maggie's inner circle, stood up to face her. "Maggie, enough is enough. I was wrong to support you. You have gone too far." This betrayal from her last ally seemed to break something in Maggie. "Et tu, Harold, you spineless worm? Fine, but remember, I know secrets about all of you." Frank called for order and proceeded with the vote. "All in favor of removing Margaret Whitfield from the position of HOA president, raise your hand." 79 hands shot up immediately. Only one remained down, Maggie's own. "Motion carried unanimously," Frank announced. "Maggie, you are no longer president. Please surrender all HOA property immediately." Maggie laughed maniacally. "Never! I would rather burn it all to the ground." Security guards had to physically escort her from the building as she screamed threats. At 3 a.m. 2 nights later, my phone rang with Jake's panicked voice. "Boss, fire! The feed storage building is on fire!" I raced to the ranch to find smoke billowing from the storage building, but miraculously, the automatic sprinkler system had activated just in time. The fire department was already on scene and the damage was minimal. Fire Chief Johnson examined the scene with his trained eye. "Mr. Thompson, this was definitely arson, clear accelerant patterns. May I see your security footage?" Once again, my 16 cameras had captured everything in stunning clarity. The footage showed Maggie at 2:47 a.m. parking down the road. At 2:58, she approached carrying a gas can. At 3:03, she began pouring gasoline around the building. At 3:04, she fumbled with matches. Then, at 3:05, the sprinkler system burst to life, drenching Maggie completely. The best part came when she ran away, slipping in mud and dropping her driver's license. Chief Johnson shook his head in amazement. "In 30 years, I have never seen a dumber criminal. She literally left her ID at the crime scene." By 7 a.m., police cars surrounded Maggie's house. Half the neighborhood watched as she emerged in a pink bathrobe, being led away in handcuffs while shouting about conspiracies. "This is a setup! Thompson framed me, I am the victim!" As the police car drove away, spontaneous applause broke out among the watching neighbors. 2 weeks later came the criminal trial. Maggie looked defeated in her orange jumpsuit, all arrogance gone. The charges were extensive: harassment, false 911 calls, fraud, attempted arson, embezzlement of $8,000, forgery, and criminal trespass. All guilty verdicts. Judge Williams showed no mercy during sentencing. "Margaret Whitfield, your pattern of behavior demonstrates complete disregard for law and property rights. This court sentences you to 18 months in county jail, $30,000 restitution to Mr. Thompson, $8,000 to the HOA, $5,000 to donation victims, 200 hours community service, lifetime ban from any HOA positions, and mandatory anger management." Maggie broke down sobbing, but karma was not finished. To pay all fines, she had to sell her house. In perfect irony, I bought it $20,000 below asking price. She had no choice but to accept. On moving day, seeing me supervise renovations, she screamed, "Enjoy my house, you monster!" I replied calmly, "I will. It will make a perfect guest house." 6 months later, Maggie was released early for community service. Highway cleanup directly in front of my ranch. Every Saturday at 7 a.m., there she was, in orange vest, picking up trash. Jake could not resist commenting when driving by. "Morning, Madam Former President. Beautiful day for community service." Carol, now my property manager, would bring her water. "Stay hydrated, Maggie. Would not want you passing out." The kindness seemed to hurt more than the insults. Frank Davies visited about the $12,000 in the community center donations. "Keep it for real improvements," I told him. "Just do not promise land you do not own." He shook my hand gratefully. "You are bigger than most, Marcus. But the story had one more chapter, one final transformation of that disputed land. 6 months later, I bought something that made this whole story come full circle. It used to be Maggie's most prized possession, her house, which is now my guest house. But can you guess what I did with that 2,000 square meter land she desperately wanted? First correct answer gets pinned. Here is a hint. She cried actual tears when she saw what I built there. 1 year later, spring returned to Thompson Ranch with renewed vitality and purpose. With the $30,000 in restitution from Maggie, plus profits from my expanding agricultural consulting business, I had transformed the entire property into something beyond my original dreams. The storage building that Maggie tried to burn down was rebuilt as a state-of-the-art facility, with climate control and automated inventory systems. I added 10 new horse stalls and launched a therapeutic riding program for children with disabilities. The guest house, formerly Maggie's pride and joy, now hosted weekend clinics and workshops for aspiring ranchers. But the crown jewel of the transformation was what I did with that disputed 2,000 square meter plot of land. Where Maggie had envisioned her monument to power and control, I built something that represented the exact opposite: Freedom Park, a community treasure open to all. This wasn't just any ordinary park, but a therapeutic recreation area designed with purpose and love. It featured a playground specially designed for children with disabilities, with wheelchair-accessible equipment and sensory play areas. A beautiful sensory garden provided a calm space for autism therapy, filled with lavender, mint, and other aromatic plants. Picnic areas with shade structures offered free gathering spaces for families and community groups. A walking trail connected the park to the neighborhood, encouraging exercise and connection. But the centerpiece was something that would ensure Maggie's story would never be forgotten. In the center of the park stood a magnificent bronze plaque, 3 feet by 4 feet, that told the story without mentioning names. Freedom Park, where greed tried to take root, generosity blooms. Where lies were told, truth prevails. Where one tried to divide, community unites. This land was coveted through deception, now given freely in celebration of justice, integrity, and neighbor helping neighbor. Donated to Sunset Hills Community by Thompson Ranch, 2025. The best revenge is a life well lived and a community well served. A smaller plaque below read simply, "Special thanks to Carol Jenkins, whistleblower with conscience." The message was clear. This land that had been the source of so much conflict was now a symbol of what communities could achieve when they stood together against tyranny. The grand opening ceremony drew over 200 people, including many who had played key roles in defeating Maggie's reign of terror. Frank Davies gave a moving speech about the importance of transparency and leadership. Dorothy Miller organized a bake sale that raised funds for the park's maintenance. Carol Jenkins stood beside me, tears of joy replacing the tears of fear she'd shed a year ago. I deliberately didn't mention Maggie in my dedication speech. There was no need. Everyone knew the story, and the park itself was testament enough. But hidden in the crowd, wearing sunglasses and a hoodie despite the warm weather, was Maggie herself. Fresh from jail and required to complete her community service, she had come to witness what her greed had ultimately created. When I announced that the land would forever remain a free community space, legally protected from any future development through an ironclad conservation easement, something broke in Maggie. She began crying, not the angry, frustrated tears of a tyrant denied, but the genuine tears of someone finally understanding what they had lost. She had been so focused on power and control that she'd missed the opportunity to be part of something beautiful. She slipped away before anyone noticed her, but I had seen her there. And I hoped, maybe just maybe, she had learned something. Carol had certainly transformed through this experience. She now ran our therapeutic riding program with passion and skill, using experience gained from raising a special needs granddaughter. "Marcus, you gave me a second chance when I didn't deserve one," she told me one day. "Now I get to give that same chance to others." She had established the Second Chances Fund to help people in difficult situations get back on their feet. The first beneficiary was Harold Peterson, who had lost his job after the Maggie scandal, but was now working as our maintenance supervisor. "Everyone deserves redemption," Carol would say. "I got mine, and I'll pay it forward forever." The new HOA under Frank's leadership had become a model of transparency and accountability. Monthly financial reports were posted online for all to see. All meetings were recorded and live-streamed for those who couldn't attend. Term limits ensured no one could build a personal fiefdom again, and most importantly, clear boundaries were established regarding the HOA's actual authority. "Marcus taught us a valuable lesson," Frank announced at one meeting. "Respect for property rights is the foundation of being good neighbors. We exist to serve the community, not rule it." When the question of Thompson Ranch's HOA membership came up, the vote was unanimous, forever emptied from HOA jurisdiction, with a formal apology for past overreach. But nothing in this entire saga became as famous as the sign I erected at the ranch entrance. 12 feet wide and 8 feet tall, illuminated 24 hours a day, it had become something of a tourist attraction. Thompson Ranch, established 2019. This is a free zone, where horses run free, and so do we. Everyone welcome, except those who call 911 on owners. Lifetime ban list. 1. Margaret Whitfield, HOA President, 2024. Crimes, false 911 calls, fraud, arson, being a Karen. If you're reading this, Maggie, hey, doesn't smell that bad. The sign went viral on social media, with people driving from neighboring towns just to take selfies with it. The hashtag HOA Free Zone trended nationally, and I received messages from people all over the country sharing their own HOA horror stories. One afternoon, while I was teaching a riding lesson to a group of special needs children, Carol waved me over with an envelope. Someone left this at the gate for you. No name, but I think I know who it's from. Inside was a handwritten letter in familiar script. Marcus, I won't ask for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I need to say this. You were right about everything. Greed blinded me, power corrupted me, jail humbled me. Seeing Freedom Park, seeing the community thriving, this is what I could have helped build if I hadn't been consumed with control. I'm moving to Puerto Rico to live with my sister. Starting over, no HOAs. Thank you for showing me the cost of hate and the value of great. That MP smell hate really doesn't smell bad. I was wrong about that too. I folded the letter with mixed emotions and showed it to Carol. Maybe people can change after all, she said softly. Maybe, I agreed, but the sign stays up. Some lessons need permanent reminders. The monthly community BBQ at the ranch had become a beloved tradition. Frank manned the grill, Dorothy's potato salad achieved legendary status, children took free pony rides, and adults shared stories that often began with, "Remember when Maggie?" One newcomer asked about this infamous Maggie person who featured in so many stories. Little Bobby, now 8 years old and wise beyond his years, provided the perfect summary. She wanted to take things that weren't hers, but Mr. Marcus taught her about sharing. As the sun set on another community gathering, I often sat on the hill overlooking Freedom Park, watching families enjoy the space that had caused so much conflict. Carol would sometimes join me with 2 cups of tea, asking her perpetual question. No regrets? None, I'd answer honestly. Every battle teaches us something. This one taught me that true power isn't about controlling others. It's about empowering your community. And forgiveness? She'd probe gently. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, I'd remind her. That's why the sign stays. Freedom requires eternal vigilance, and humor helps the medicine go down. I saddled up Midnight, the beautiful quarter horse I'd rescued the previous year, for an evening ride around the property, past the guest house that had once been Maggie's castle, through Freedom Park where children's laughter echoed in the evening air, along the boundary with the HOA neighborhood where I'd waved to Frank and Dorothy and other friends, and always past that legendary sign, still shining bright in the gathering dusk. My phone buzzed with a video message from a fellow ranch owner in Florida. Bro, you won't believe this. The crazy HOA president here just called the cops about my pet duck, claims it violates the waterfowl ordinance. Can you help? I laughed, turning Midnight toward home. It seemed Maggie's spiritual successor had appeared, and the cycle of HOA madness continued. But wait, remember that HOA president who called the cops about a duck? That's my next story, and it's even crazier than Maggie. This president didn't just call 911, they called FBI, CIA, and animal control about a duck named Gerald. Smash subscribe if you want to hear how I helped a Florida ranch owner expose an HOA president who claimed ducks were communist infiltrators. And comment your city if your HOA needs to be exposed next. Because folks, the Maggie story, that's just beginner level in the HOA Crazy Olympics.